Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very glad you're with us. It's January 20th, 2021. We're glad you're here. For those people on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentations, please enter them in the chat box. As our presenter takes a break, we will make sure we get those questions answered. And for those people watching on Facebook right now, if you will enter your questions into the comment field, I am monitoring that feed and I'll make sure we get those questions answered for you. For those people on Zoom, if you're using a PC or Mac, we ask that you use the speaker view, which is in the lower left-hand corner. And where you see that red arrow, you can grab the little white line there and drag it back and forth to make the speaker bigger or smaller, whatever ratio you'd like to have on your screen. Please note this event is currently being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comment, name, and picture to appear. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. In 2008, I founded Career DFW to help people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in their job search. In 2012, I expanded and started CareerUSA.org to help people outside the DFW area. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search. It's available on Amazon for 15 bucks. So if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you want to drive by my house, you can throw 10 bucks out the window and I'll attempt to throw a book in your window if you drive real slow. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. And I'll tell you about our upcoming program at the end of the session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. Well, we have two gentlemen who put this workshop together for us, Mark McDonald, who leads the practice interview team, and Walt Glass, who leads the interview success workshop. When COVID started and we stopped meeting in person, I said, how can we still get this information out? I approached both these guys and said, hey, what do you think? What would you like to do? And they came up with a 13 step. They said 12 steps weren't enough. We needed 13. So they've come up with 13. So Mark, do you want to introduce yourself?
All right, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we wrote down everything we thought was necessary to share with you, and it turned out to use up 13 sessions. So good enough. That also turns out to be the number of weeks in 1/4 of a year. So we could technically do it 4 times a year. I think we shoot for three cycles a year with some guest speakers in between. So I'm Mark McDonald. I joined the pit crew in 2013, January 2013, after I got laid off for the 3rd time in the telecommunications equipment industry. That's now called IT infrastructure. It's the electronics that the phone company used to provide service to you. And now it's mostly data to your homes and to your business. And it got really tough in 2002 with that recession. The business started to crack, the industry started to contract. And so between 2002 and 2012, I got laid off 3 times and got involved in the pit crew, and I've been involved ever since. About a year later, I started leading the pit crew. And so I've got 8 years experience collecting data and use that to inform what I present here. If you would like to practice, we do virtual interviews now. I need a job description and a resume from you. The virtual interviews are very personalized and customized to your background. And instead of going over it in detail here, the best way to find out how the pit crew works is just to send me an email at dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. And I'll send you back a description of what you need to do to get involved with the pit crew. And that means, schedule a practice interview and how that works. And then once we've got your interview scheduled, I'll also send you some preparation material for your interview. So, and part of that preparation material includes what we're going to talk about today, how to prepare for a video interview. Besides running the pit crew, I also coach on one topic. I have one area of expertise, and that's why did you leave your last job? And so again, if you'd like to have a conversation about that, that's a confidential discussion about how to answer that question with brevity and confidence. And for most people, it might be very straightforward. You may have been laid off with a whole bunch of other people because of COVID. But if you've got a more complicated situation than that, then please reach out to me And also I will link in with you if you just send me a brief note that says we met on Interview Wednesday, and I'll add you to my network, but which is mostly people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area from all different kinds of backgrounds that I've met while supporting the pit crew. So that's my introduction. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mark. The other gentleman is Walt Glass. He is with us listening today, but he's a little under the weather. So Walt has something called the Interview Success Workshop. He does it on Tuesdays. I don't think he's doing it during the month of January, but he may pick up during February when he starts to feel a little bit better. If you'd like to reach out to Walt, you may do so at walt_glass@yahoo.com, or check out his LinkedIn profile, and you can find out in the About section everything about the workshop that he produces. So today we'll be doing video interviewing session number 4. So Mark, take it away.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Let me share my screen. There we go. You guys see that all right?
You're good.
Now the next trick is to get the chat window to appear. And I like to see the chat window, although I don't use it very well. I will glance at it every now and then, and Jeff's watching it. So if you have any questions, as Jeff mentioned, we used to have these education sessions at the end of the pit crew meeting. So we'd do 3 or 4 interviews in one meeting, and then we'd get together at the end and talk about those interviews and have a little education session. And so it was very interactive, and what we put together now is more of a tutorial or a presentation, and it's challenging to have an interactive discussion about this, but I encourage you to put your questions in the chat as soon as they occur to you, and I will be glancing at it occasionally, and there's some built-in stops in the presentation here where we can address questions that you may have. So I see some people have put their contact information in there. If you are a first-time attendee to the pit crew or the interviewing workshop, then please put that in the chat window as well. And I encourage the members who've been here several times to reach out to those people, and we'll do a little Zoom networking here by announcing that you're a first timer. Anybody? There we go. Thank you. Okay, today's topic is video interviewing or virtual interviewing. This is our whole sequence of 13 sessions, and we're on session number 4 right now, video interviewing. And so if you look at this, and I've color coded it, the way these sessions go is the first 5 sessions are about preparing to interview. So this is the 4th session of the first group of 5. And next week, we wrap up the preparing to interview section with analyzing the job description. So we talked about preparing to interview in general, how to prepare for a specific interview. Star stories were last week, video interviewing this week, and then next week analyzing the job description. So that's all about how you prepare to interview in general and for a specific interview. And then on week 6, we start effective interviewing. So there's another group of 5 which talk about opening and closing your interviews, what you do when you follow up, discussing compensation and other important questions like why did you leave your last job, how you can affect the course of the interview by asking questions yourself, and how to build rapport and demonstrate enthusiasm. So those are the 5 topics we'll be covering next after next week when we finish up session 5. And then the last 3 sessions are kind of advanced topics that combine multiple pieces, I guess, of the education we provided to greater effect, right? So kind of second order effects, so to speak. So that's the agenda. And so I encourage you to, come back and watch these in the future, but they're also recorded. The sessions we did in the fall have been recorded and available on Career USA YouTube channel. Jeff will talk about that at the end. So if there's one in particular you'd like to get a head start on, or if you'd like to go back and review, even the ones we've done, the first 3 we've done already on this cycle starting in January are up on the Career USA YouTube channel. So don't fret. If you're just joining, you can go back and review. Okay, so chat window time. Why don't you guys put in for me into the chat window, what are the challenges we face with a video interview? You can put in one, you can put in more than one. What are the challenges we face? What are the challenges you face? Lighting, okay. Technology not working, yep. The background, distractions, bad lighting, background and technology. That's pretty comprehensive, Patty. Background bandwidth, that's a good one. Glare from eyeglasses, intermittent internet, dog barking, or cat jumping on your keyboard. The right tone, good. We're going to talk about all of these. Can't hear them well with their crappy speaker or the headphones, okay? Where you put your notes, oh, good one. Haven't heard that one before. Technology, what to wear. Difficult to make eye-to-eye contact, absolutely. Making the home office look professional. Okay, a lot of great stuff in there, and we're going to talk about all of those things for sure. So thank you guys. And so I hated going on job interviews until I realized the perfect answer to the question, but this also applies to video interviews. What is your biggest weakness? My interview skills. So this is kind of a little joke, but it's true. You know, 90% of a video interview is the same as a face-to-face interview. You know, maybe 95%, but there are a few differences, and we're going to talk about those today. They don't need to cause you any more anxiety than you might already have. Once you understand what you need to do, you can practice those things as well and be well prepared for the interview, which includes the content and the questions you would get asked and the answers you would give. So I'd say 90, maybe not more than 90% is exactly the same as you would prepare for a regular interview, even though it's in a video format. But nevertheless, they can cause a little stress. Nobody seems to like doing video interviews. I don't know, I think there might be some advantages to doing a video interview, you know, like you don't have to have a complete outfit. Your shoes don't have to match your outfit. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to wear shoes if you don't want to. You don't have to worry about some traffic event making you late to your interview and causing a bad impression. But really the advantages of the video interviews go to the companies. The companies like them. They're able to share them with others. They can record them and share them with others who didn't get to participate in the interview. There are tools now that, you know, some of the companies use proprietary tools or professional tools that they paid for that help them screen the candidates based on the videos that they do. And we'll talk about the HireVue platform today. In general, they believe the tools save them money. They save them time and therefore save them money or help them make better decisions, help them screen out, you know, the hundreds of candidates they may receive, 100 applications they may receive for a posting. It's like a step up from what they do, some of them do today on screening resumes, right? A lot of resumes are screened by some kind of artificial intelligence. It may be very simple. It may be looking for just keywords, but they're trying to, you know, call out the number of resumes they have to look at. So this is a similar concept with video interviewing. Now, this is a good one. Not used to working in front of the camera. That is definitely a challenge, and I'm still learning how to do it, and I've been doing this now for almost a year, maybe 10 months. So you definitely have to work the camera, and you need to learn to do that, and you learn to do that by practicing. It's awkward, yeah, definitely a bit awkward that you're not actually there face to face to have a conversation and to see their reaction. So I agree with that, and you know, something that needs to be overcome. And the more you do it, the less awkward it'll feel, the more confident you will be. Phil, we may present ourselves in the wrong way. So absolutely, and there are a few things that we'll talk about that are really, you should really try to avoid. So when you're in a video interview as opposed to a face-to-face interview, And I'll just mention one now. Touching your face is wildly distracting for whatever reason. You might do it when you're face to face and nobody really thinks anything of it. But on video, it's very distracting. And I say that from my personal experience, seeing people do it and, living through my reaction to that, which is not at all positive. Impersonal, yes, impersonal. And we're going to talk about one-way video interviews or video bots, but there's really nobody at the other end. So that's the definition of impersonal right there. And we'll have a session about how to build rapport coming up in the effective interviewing section of the series. And so those techniques that you would use face-to-face, you can also use on a video. So not that much different, but it is something you need to work on. Okay, what should we do prior to a video interview? So this isn't a question you need to fill out. I'm going to go right into it here, but what should we do prior to a video interview to prepare for the video interview? Well, you want to certainly prepare as you would for any other type of interview, right? Preparation leads to confidence. We've talked about STAR stories already. We've talked about your catalog of achievements. And we talked about doing research on the target companies in general, and when you have an interview, doing additional research. You need to spend several hours preparing for each hour of interviewing. And I'm not sure exactly how many. It kind of depends on how much preparation you've already done. I had a panelist for the pit crew who landed recently, and he shared with me that he spent 5 hours preparing for a 1-hour interview, or even said 5 hours per hour of interviewing. So if he was going to have 3 interviews, he'd spend some extra time doing research on that particular interviewer and being well prepared. So he had additional stories to tell, so he didn't have to tell any overlapping stories between the 3 interviewers. So it's multiple hours. Let's just say it's multiple hours of preparation per hour of interviewing. And so that's kind of what it takes. And whether it's video or face-to-face, you would be doing that to build your confidence and be prepared. There's several types of video interviewing, and this first one is not done so much anymore, but you may have experienced this in the past where you were sent to, 15 years ago, nobody had video interviewing in their homes, and not too many had it in the business. But you could go to like a Kinko's, for instance, something like a Kinko's, and they would have a video interview room. Some hotels had set up video interview rooms that could be hired out. And so you would go to a remote location, not the company's location, but a remote location, and have the interview there. And as technology evolved, more and more companies had video technology inside their office. You might come to their office to interview with people at other locations in the company. So they had control over the technology and the room and the lighting and all that kind of stuff. They did that for you. But it was still a video interview. You weren't really face to face with the person you were interviewing. And so that's how it got started. Nowadays there's a lot of technology available, and there's live two-way interviews, one-on-one, two-way interviews with a group of people, and the pit crew practices 3-person panel interviews, and there's usually a host on as well. So that's a 5-person video conference. And it works pretty well. I was concerned when we first started this that it wouldn't be very effective, but it works pretty well. And we're going to talk some more about how you prepare for that. The newer thing now is one-way interviews. And this is where interview bot ask you questions, and then you get some time to respond. And so I'm going to talk some more about that and give some examples around HireVue in particular, and how that works. That's a little bit a different level of challenge, right? Because you don't get any feedback at all. You just have to answer the questions and hope you did well. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but that's a new thing, relatively new. And I'd like to hear if you guys would just put in your in the chat window, how many of you, just put in there if you've had one of these one-way interviews already. If they've asked you, if a company who's interviewed you has asked you to do that. Oh, that's going by pretty quick. No, yes, Tony has, Tony Bieniosek. Robin, okay. State Farm. Laura says she's had a few. Lumen uses it, okay. All right, so maybe 20% of you. So yeah, I think it's getting more popular. There's multiple devices now that are effective for video interviewing. You can use a computer, a laptop. You can use a regular desktop computer with an external camera. You can use a tablet. You can use a smartphone. And Pit Crew has used all of these in the past. I would say a laptop computer does the best typically. Tablets and smartphones sometimes don't have enough processing power. And a smartphone that's on the open network may have connectivity issues. You know, if they're on the cellular network, for instance, if they're not on Wi-Fi in your home. So that's just kind of, I think all of these can be effective, and certainly people use them to positive effect. My preference, just based on the possibility of things going wrong, of the tablet being underpowered or the network being congested, would be to stick with a laptop or a desktop computer if you could. But you can do it all of these ways if you need to. Various video conferencing software is now available. Lots of different options are available. This is a big growth area in technology. And video conferencing software like Zoom can be used, or Microsoft Teams I hear pretty often. But there's also very specific interview-based video conference platforms which give you the ability to ask questions. So the company that's using that can pose the questions, they can change the questions. They're going to have a whole catalog of questions for the different people kinds of people they may interview, you know, for accountants or for engineers or for customer support people. They can have a whole catalog and set the amount of time associated with the question and preparation and things like that. So those are dedicated platforms, and there's quite a few of them, 400 or more. It's very much like the case with applicant tracking systems. There's not one dominant applicant tracking system, and some of them are much better than others, and some of them are just very popular, but popular means they may have a 10 or 15% market share. Yeah, we're going to talk, Patty is used as a screening tool. Yeah, the bots can be used as a screening tool. It's part of their attractiveness to the company that uses them. Okay, now this is an interactive question, and while you guys are answering this, I'm going to be looking to see if there's anything else on the chat window. What is the #1 mistake with video interviewing? What is the #1 mistake that the candidates make when they're video interviewing? Bad lighting, forgetting it's still an interview, not smiling, bad lighting, not testing equipment, other distractions, not looking at the camera, bad camera angle, less prepared. All right, thank you very much for that. Jeff, is there any questions that I've missed that we want to answer now before I go on?
I don't think so. I think you've gotten them all.
All right, thank you very much. So the #1 mistake with video interviewing is distraction. Distraction inhibits listening by the interviewers. And I think you'd be surprised how amazingly easy it is to distract an interviewer. So Jeff has found a tool, that a company that's offered to give us their one-way interview tool, so we can use it for you guys to practice with. And so as part of that process, they gave us 4 videos of interviews that have been held on their tool. And I got to say that if you talk much more than 2 minutes, maybe 90 seconds, I'm going to zone out, because I was just watching these interviews and they were different people, different personalities, most of them were kind of high tech or marketing interviews. And it was really straightforward for me to lose attention. And so things in the background, your clothing, things you do, like I mentioned, touching your face, can all distract the interviewer. And the big ones are the dog comes into the room, or the cat jumps on the keyboard, or the lawnmower. The yard guys show up. And for me, it's the yard guys show up next door. I don't have yard guys, but they show up next door and start making a lot of noise. So distraction. So we're going to talk about the distractions you can control for sure, and how to eliminate those. Okay, let's go over what preparation we should accomplish before an online interview. Number one, you want to test your hardware and software. So, and this was mentioned at the beginning, somebody mentioned this. You want to make sure your camera is going to work, whether it's an internal camera or an external camera. You want to make sure your audio is going to work, internal, external, wired or wireless, headphones or earbuds. Now you have a choice here, and the pit crews interviewed some people who wear headphones. The nice thing about headphones and the microphone boom is that if you tend to turn your head or lean forward or lean backward, which would be a good thing to do to show interest. If you lean forward, your voice changes, right? It gets louder or it gets softer. And so with the headphones and a boom mic, you can do that kind of thing and it doesn't change your voice. As a matter of fact, your voice is very steady, right? The sound is always a constant because it's coming through the microphone and not through the microphone on your headset and not the microphone on your computer. So that can be very effective. And earbuds as well, where the microphone hangs down right next to your chin, can be pretty effective as well. You just need to decide, if that's a look that you want to prepare for it. And personally, that does not bother me at all. Even, the big headphones do not distract because I'm primarily focused on your face and not your ears. But, take a look at yourself. You can try this out on Zoom, on this particular Zoom meeting. If you think you want to use headphones because of your environment, maybe there's a little background noise or something. Oh, and by the way, repetitive background noise, at least Zoom can filter that out. Okay, so eventually, even the lawnmowers outside, if they're steady, if they're not changing their volume a lot, Zoom can filter that out. I'm not sure that all tools can do that, but if you have a little bit of background noise, the air conditioner running or something like that, then I don't think you need to be worried about it. Even typing on your keyboard can be filtered out by Zoom's technology. But I thought of that because you can practice all of this stuff, and you can practice it even when you're not involved in an interview. Like today on this video conferencing session, you can try out the headphones, you can try out the earphones and see how they look and how they sound. When you ask a question, you can go back and look at the recording and see how that came through. So you're not completely without opportunities to prepare in advance and see what works for you. We're going to talk about camera height and things like that in a second. Yeah, test at the same time of day. So now the other part, and you guys mentioned this as well at the beginning, is having enough speed on your internet connection. So you need about 2 megabits per second, and you can check your speed on speedtest.net. And if you can even go, for me, I can go to my service provider, which is Grande Communications, and they have a speed test tool on Grande Communications as well. So I can just check and see that my internet service is working at the speed that it's supposed to. Now, we're going to talk about 2 things here. There's speed, and then there's also how it's being used. And so on another slide, I'll talk about what's going on in your house that may affect how good your connection is to the other end of the line, even though the speed of the connection may be good. Okay, so you've got speed and you've got congestion, 2 different things. But if your speed's not up to par, and then you're going to have continuing troubles, okay, with the connection. And you probably have seen this. Sometimes it'll freeze. Sometimes you'll hear some little artifacts in the voice. It'll sound funny. Sometimes the voice will go away, but the video doesn't. And eventually, if it gets too bad, it'll just drop completely, disconnect. So that's not good at all. And then you want to test your interview software, whatever you're using. Hopefully, if it's a public domain thing like Zoom or Google Hangouts or FaceTime, you can test that. Make sure you're familiar with how it works. I guess Microsoft Teams is the one I hear the most of. Microsoft Teams is a little tough. I haven't been really able to find anybody to practice that with because it's more of an enterprise application. So not too many individuals have that. They get it as part of their work package at work. So if anyone knows of a way that I could offer to candidates to practice their Teams, Microsoft Teams setup, please put that in the chat window, and I'd appreciate that. Another thing you might not think about with your software is your computer software. And that means, are you scheduled for an upgrade? And how long is that upgrade going to take? So a good thing to do is several hours before your interview, actually reboot your machine to make sure it's not going to spend 30 minutes or an hour to reload or update the software before it shuts down, and then restart it. Same deal. Make sure it's not going to have some delay on startup because it's updating software on your operating system. Here's the Zoom audio settings, and this shows some of the things you can do. Right up here is you can test the speaker, so you can test how loud your speaker is, and you can change the level. You can test the microphone and change the level there as well. So those are some of the characteristics you can set up when you're doing a Zoom video call. And then this one down here, we tell people this all the time. If you just want to temporarily unmute yourself, you can hold the space bar down, but you actually have to tell Zoom to do that or it won't work. So right here's a little check mark where you can press and hold the space bar, temporarily unmute yourself, and then you release the space bar, you're muted again. Okay, so we talked about speed. Let's talk about the stability of your internet connection. And so I've had some cases where this has happened with the pit crew. And I tell people, when they have trouble on a practice interview that they need to get an Ethernet cable. And they need to take that cable and run it from their computer directly to their Wi-Fi router. So they bypass the over-the-air nature of Wi-Fi. And in particular, in my house, if you turn on the microwave oven, even though it's 40 feet away on the other side of the house, it will affect the Wi-Fi. Sometimes it just degrades it. Sometimes it takes it down. As far as, it's not working while the microwave is running. And so the microwave works in the same frequency band that Wi-Fi does. So there's any kind of leakage from the microwave, and they do leak a little bit, will affect your Wi-Fi. So with a cable, you avoid that. You have a direct connection. You're still going through the Wi-Fi router, which connects to your service provider on the other side. So that was the advice I've given. Now there's more to it than that. Okay, the Ethernet cable makes sure that what's going on over the air is not a distraction to your practice interview, but other people in the house can be using your bandwidth. And this happened just a few weeks ago. The kids were at home, they were watching videos, and those videos, were affecting the stability of the Zoom video conference we were having. And so this came up because I had practiced with this person before and there had been issues, and I said, well, get your cable. get a Wi-Fi, Ethernet cable, and so they did. But we still had the issue, and so he started digging a little deeper. Turns out he's an IT guy, and so that's what he discovered, that the videos that his children were watching, which use up a lot of bandwidth on the connection, were interfering with his video conference. So you need to shut down those things that are going on in your house that are bandwidth hogs. You may even need to shut down things on your computer, open browser windows, or other applications that are running in the background that might cause congestion. So with those kind of precautions, you should be able to support a very stable and steady video interview connection. Yeah, somebody commented here that VPN is a special kind of secure connection that you set up between your computer and the computer at the other end, and they use a lot of bandwidth as well. That's a good comment. Camera position. So I think this causes a lot of angst, and I can see it. Oftentimes we give feedback to almost every candidate that comes onto the pit crew about their camera position. So here's the deal. The camera needs to be at eye level or slightly above, okay? Maybe slightly above eye level is the best. And let me just adjust mine a little bit because it's a little low. So this is not the angle of your camera. This is the height of your camera. So you want the height of the camera to be right at eye level or slightly above. And if you're working on a tablet or a cell phone, you need something to hold it, to keep it steady. You don't want to hold it in your hands. The most often thing I see on the pit crew is when people pop up, the camera's too low, they've got it tilted up to compensate, and I can see the ceiling. Maybe not the whole ceiling, but part of the ceiling. And I don't need to see any of the ceiling at all. You want it to be looking straight at you at eye level and properly distanced. Also, you want to be able to see, like me, like Jeff, you want to see part of the shoulders. You need to leave yourself a little room to lean in. If you choose to lean in, you don't want to be, like you're sitting across the room from them. You want to be about like this. Jeff looks good there. He's showing a little bit more than me. I kind of prefer just to show the kind of from my top button up. So the other thing is people are too close. So I see their ceiling and they're too close to the camera. So when they first arrive, and those first impressions are important. So you want to have this set up in advance. And again, you on Zoom here on our video conference, you can look and see what you think about your setup and the location of your camera, and who looks good to you and how you compare, and get that set up well in advance. And I've measured, if I have to rearrange things or whatever, I know I need my computer to be 8.5 inches off the top of my desk to get the camera in the right position for my setup. I think this goes without saying, but let's say it anyway. You need a quiet, private, you don't want people walking through the room behind you. Well-lit place, free from interruptions or distractions. And well-lit is relative, okay? So when I first started working on my lighting, which lighting is pretty challenging, and you can see I have a big window right over to my right, and today's a nice sunny day, and it's very bright. It's shining very brightly on the right side of my face. And so I've worked on that quite a bit. I have a special light. You don't have to have a really bright room, okay? You have to have a balanced room, a room where the lighting is balanced. And so I have, with my special light, which is one of those round vlogging lights. So if it's right in front of you, it gives equal lighting on, all the way around your face. but I have to close the shades over here to my right completely, so no sun is coming in. So the room is not terribly bright, but it is balanced. And so again, you can play with that while you're on these video conferences and figure out what the right balance is for your room. And you don't want shadows on your face. Overhead lighting is no overhead lighting at all, because it causes shadows. You know, your forehead causes shadows on your cheek, your nose causes a shadow across your mouth. So no overhead lighting. It needs to be behind the camera, slightly up, like a couple of feet, because reflection from glasses is an issue. There you go. You can see the reflection of my glasses. So that's where the light needs to be, and that'll give you a very good effect. There'll still be some shadows, but your face will be well lit and avoid shadows directly on your face. Okay, you want to dress professionally, but only half a dress. You just need from the waist up. Not really. I mean, I'd recommend that you dress as if you were in a real interview, because it kind of affects your perspective on what you're doing and your professionalism. And the same advice you would get for a face-to-face interview applies here. You want to dress like they dress, and maybe dress a little slightly better than they address, like the 1.5 times rule. You don't want to be overdressed, but you want to be dressed a little bit better than they typically dress. And so you need to know what that is. If they're a golf shirt and slacks, you might wear a button up but no tie, just slightly better than what they dress. And you want to be like them. They want to see themselves in you, and you want to see yourself in them as well. So you have to do a little research on what's appropriate. In video interviewing in particular, though, you need to stay away from patterns. Sometimes patterns interact with the camera to produce strange looking artifacts. And so as you move slightly, you'll see lines and ripples across the pattern. So that breaks the golden rule. Don't do anything distracting. And so that's one of the things you can do. And it's not a theoretical concept. I've seen it happen, and especially with stripes. But any kind of regular pattern can cause interactions with the camera and the network that look funny and are distracting. So soft colors, solid colors, avoid patterns. We just talked about glare on glasses. The best way to fix that is the height of the position of the light is really the issue. And you've got to get a little balance between where the light is and where you normally look. And if you follow the recommendations, you're looking slightly up at the camera, which means the light in front of you needs to be slightly higher. But again, you can look at all that stuff and make sure it looks balanced to you and no shadows. You may forget that the light from your display on your computer can cause a problem as well. And of course, you can't move that. It's got to be right in front of you. And so the way you deal with that is you dim down your display. So you want to have it at full light when you're kind of setting up things, so you can see how you look with your setup, but then you can dim it down so that it doesn't reflect off your glasses. And that's a pretty common thing to see in the pit crew too, is we can see the display reflecting off the glasses. You can also, in more modern computers, and I don't know how modern, mine's about a year old and it has it. So I think for the last couple of 3 years, at least, you've been able to adjust the color temperature of your monitor. It may depend on the brand you have, but you can make, there's a night mode, which has a softer light. It's not as bright, it's more yellowy or orangey. And so that, you can do that as well to help reduce the glare off your glasses. And those special computer glasses that are designed to screen out the blue light reflect. They screen out the blue light by reflecting it. And so that will show up as well. And so some people I've talked to have just gone away from those. They don't use them while they're interviewing. They use an older non-glare or non-computer monitor reducing lenses because of that effect of reflecting the blue light. Practice, practice, practice. I think I've said that a few times. So take advantage to practice whenever you get a chance. Let's talk a little bit about AI software now. It's a good time to pause. Is there any questions?
Well, yep, I'm on pause. I can't figure out if I'm unmuted or not. Somebody said make sure you avoid the Charlie Brown shirt. So yeah, a nice solid shirt's usually the best way to go. Canada asked Bob asked any suggestions for websites for video backgrounds to use? And somebody else said just stick to a plain wall.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I forgot to mention that. So I have a video background set up here. I would not recommend it for interviewing. Now this is very plain, okay, but the issue is, let's see if it'll do it, is that we'll call you, if you move your hand, there you go, see that's my chair back there coming and going. So that's what happens. The computer's trying to ignore what's behind you and insert something new, and it can lose it for, half a second or so. There, see that? And so that can be extremely distracting. And so I don't recommend use backgrounds. It also takes extra processing power. So if your computer's a little underpowered, it's going to be even worse. You just need to have a nice, clean, sterile background behind you. And, you can't really go overboard on sterile. It can be a flat white wall, okay? It's all about you. It's not about your environment. So try to find a place that's quiet, has good balanced lighting, and has nothing at all distracting. Now, you don't fret if you can't get that, but I've suggested to people take the pictures down off the wall that are behind you, and it's not an overstatement to say it's easy to distract an interviewer, very easy to distract an interviewer. So take all that stuff out of view.
I know that I'll spend time looking at everybody's background during an interview to see, well, what's behind Patty, what she has hanging up there, and what books does Jose have on his wall? Oop, he just turned off his camera. I'm looking at the snowy scene that Paul has. I'm going to look at those things, and I'm going to stop listening to what you have to say. So, you keep the focus on you. Do a plain background never goes bad. One of the something else I posted in there, I posted a link to Amazon for a laptop holder, something that will turn your laptop up so it'll get my camera happens to be the top of my laptop or at the top of the screen. I know some people have a camera that's at the very bottom, but you've got to get that thing elevated somehow. So that's a laptop holder I use. I recommend it. I have my laptop on it right now. I'm not using my laptops over here. I'm using it as a secondary monitor, but I put that in there. And also I've posted in a link. Somebody asked what camera I use, and I use a Logitech C90, which is a 1080p high definition camera, great audio. And oh yeah, Daniel's posted a flat sheet can create a good clean background. As long as it's flat.
Yeah, just hang it up on the wall, or you can get a screen back there. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, a sheet's good enough. I mean, they may know it's a sheet, but it's all about you, not what's behind you.
Right.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about HireVue. Now, HireVue is both a video interview platform, so just a regular like Zoom, I guess. One-way video interview platform, in the sense that it just records the answers to the questions they pose. But it's also got an analytics part, so where they use that to analyze the video and the words that you used and compare that with some pre-recorded information they have from employees and make selections. So we're going to talk about that part of HireVue and a little bit about how the tool works, just if it's just recording the questions that are presented to you. And there's lots of these available. The one that Jeff and I are working with is called Easy Hire. And here's what HireView says, right? They are capable of assessing thousands of different traits, including word choice, voice inflection, eye movement, and facial cue, among many other data points. And they don't really say exactly what they look at or how they use it. So it's one of the mysteries behind how this AI software works, is they all consider it confidential information, and there's not a lot of literature, scientific literature that's available that backs up their assertion that they can do an effective job of doing this. But nevertheless, the whole hiring process is a bit of a mystery. How do hiring managers decide who they're going to hire? And this falls into that same category. It's a bit of a mystery how they do what they do, but they do analyze your eye movements, your word selection, your voice inflection, all those kinds of things. Now, there is a lot of science, I guess, behind detecting if people are not being truthful, and people are trained to figure that out. So I guess you could train a computer to do that well. So that's also the kind of thing they're looking for. So if the facial reaction and the words that come out of your mouth don't match, that's kind of a red flag. Now, part of it is, it says here, it discovers the competencies and attributes and behaviors of the firm's best employees. Okay, so they pick some employees for whatever role they're interviewing for, and they go through this one-way interview, and then it uses that to inform the parameters that are used to assess future interviews. And then the company gets a chance to weight those parameters. So they adjust them to ones that they think are more important and ones that are less important. And then that's what's used going forward. So they come up with, quote unquote, this ideal profile of kind of reactions to the questions that employees have given, and therefore future employees, if they kind of match up with that, that's a good match. So the parameters are, I guess the important thing to know is that the parameters are determined from existing employees, and then they're weighted afterwards, by someone who's, responsible for putting a weight on the parameters, how important each one is relative to the others. And the idea behind that weighting is that only behaviors that are important for this particular role are included. So statistically linked to job performance. So you may have, and I would say, I'm trying to figure out how this works, frankly, but I was just thinking about, how do I make decisions about who I hired, and it's not like there's one thing or two things. It's kind of a preponderance of the evidence. And so I think the AI tools look at a lot of different things. The company gets to decide on which ones are going to be prioritized for a particular role. And then they see how people score against those, and that informs a decision, okay, helps them make a decision. You'll either land in the top third, the middle third, or the bottom third. So there's not like, they do 10 people and they're ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 10, who did the best, who did the worst. It's a broader statement than that, top third, middle third, or bottom third. And system bias, this is one of the knocks and one of the things to wonder about. System bias can exist if the database contains bias. Okay, so I've heard of a couple of cases of this. I think there's a kind of a well-known one where Amazon discovered that the one-way interviewer was giving preference to males because the people who had, the employees that they interviewed to find the parameters were almost all male, right? Just because they had more male employees. So that kind of situation in their workforce, which they're trying to correct, also appeared in the bot after it had been set up, okay? So if there's bias in the examples that they used, there's going to be bias in the result. Now, another example I heard was the same deal, but except it was an AI for scanning resumes. Okay, so this is not well known and been around for a while. Same deal, you know, they took the resumes of their top performers. Most of them were male, so the AI started screening out, you know, mostly males from the resumes that it was taking a look at. Now, what did Amazon do? Amazon just quit using it, right? So that's just not, until it improves and is able to, you know, be fair, the way they define fair, then they're not going to use the tool. Firms likely lean on this more than they'd like to admit. And you know, the research I did said they're using it primarily for kind of entry-level jobs and where they get a lot of applications and a lot of people might appear to be qualified, and so they need a little help winnowing them down. I mean, if they get 1,000 applications, they're still going to run them through some sort of resume reader, but after that, they also, the proponents say, you know, whatever biases people have who make these decisions, those biases are not in the software. Okay, now to some extent there may be because of the way it was trained, but it doesn't start out with any built-in biases or unaware. You know, it's true, I think, that people have biases that they're unaware of that come to the fore when they have to make decisions. So that's not true about the software. It doesn't have those kinds of biases, doesn't have any preconceived notion, and it is going to help sort out who's the best candidates, the better candidates of the group. So they're relying on it, and they can save a lot of money, they think, you know, hours of time mostly. Any questions about that? Yeah, somebody said, talk about a way to institutionalize the lack of diversity. So yeah, it can happen. Okay, how to take a HireVue interview. This is, you can search for this and this is what you find. You want to prepare like you usually prepare. You want to dress appropriately. You have to have a certain Adobe Flash Player most recent version. And so when you do the prep work with HireVue, which you can, you know, go on and take it through the process, it'll check for these kinds of things. You have to have a webcam either, you know, built into your computer or a USB version. Then you need to log on to the interview. So now you have an interview scheduled. There'll be some things for you to read, fast facts, and a tutorial about how the tool works. So to help you set it up. The program, HireVue program, will check the speed and the availability of the camera and the microphones. It'll tell you if it's turned off or it's not working. Oh, by the way, that reminds me, one of the things I forgot to mention about when I was talking about headphones and mics and earphones is that this has happened to the pit crew as well, is that sometimes people will have their headphones, their earbuds plugged into their computer, okay? And so they'll come on to the interview and their voice is really soft. Well, it's really soft because the microphone that's sitting on top of their desk that's attached to their earbuds is the microphone that's working because they haven't unplugged the earbuds. So that can happen to you as well if you're using an external microphone and you don't intend to, that you want to use the computer's microphone, you need to make sure those things are unplugged. But this is so that can happen even if the software checks to make sure your microphone plugged in. It says, yeah, your microphone's plugged in, but it may not be the one that you want to use, okay? I use the one that's built into the computer. I have a lapel microphone that I've tried out, didn't seem to do much better than the computer, but you can use what you think is going to work best for you. Okay, so then HireVue suggests you need to practice. And there's the direct quote from the website. We can't emphasize enough the importance of using the practice questions. So nobody wants you to flunk a one-way interview because you're unfamiliar with the technology or not very good at video interviewing. So HireVue goes out of the way to emphasize this and give you practice questions and you can do them over, and you can check your lighting and your background, how you sound, how your video looks. So you can do all of that stuff before you actually start the interview. And they strongly suggest you do that, okay? Don't let lack of preparation or understanding how the tool works, be a hindrance to your success. And one thing I've heard through a couple of people that have used different tools is that sometimes the timers that they give you work a little bit different. So sometimes you'll get a countdown timer. So, and that countdown timer is your practice time, for instance, okay? But there's also, when you get into the real interview, there's also a prep timer. So they'll present the question and they'll give you some prep time. Might be 30 seconds, might be a minute. And so that's the countdown to when the camera comes on. It's not the countdown to when your camera time ends. So that's another thing just to be aware of. So when they present a counter, is it your countdown timer to when the camera comes on, and then another timer starts and you get 2 minutes or 3 minutes, or is it a countdown timer until the camera goes off? So in HireView's case, they give you 30 seconds to prepare for each question, and then up to 3 minutes to answer. I would not take 3 minutes. This is where your preparation and your star stories comes into play. And we recommend that a story be no longer than 90 seconds. And I got a pretty good dose of it watching these practice interviews that Easy Hire provided to us. And I was just saying, don't keep talking. Don't keep talking. And some of these answers were pretty long. So practice. And this is what you should do in a face-to-face interview as well. You should try to keep your answers short. It's a little bit tougher because there's no interaction, right? Because when we talk about star stories, we talk about ways to shorten the story, okay? And one way to shorten the story is to not tell all of it, just tell part of it. Tell the interviewer you've just told part of it and see if they respond. See if they say, well, tell me the other 3 things that you didn't tell me. This is not going to work on a video interview, okay? So you need to have a complete story that's going to fit into the 2 minutes, and maybe you go a little bit longer because it's a video interview to make sure you cover all the things, but they still need to be very brief and to the point, okay? And so that's one thing that's extra important in video interviewing. There may be a little bit of slack available in a face-to-face interview. Okay, and then when you're done, you're done. I think the tools can have variable number of questions. The ones that I watched were just 4 questions, so they were more like screening interviews. But the tool allows you to have a lot. I mean, you can program in dozens. It also locks the order, so they can say, we want to give these first 3 questions in order, and then the rest may be in some random order, or the whole thing may be randomized. So they may ask the questions in different orders to different candidates, although it's always the same questions. So there's ways, that they can help take any bias out of, the order of the questions might lead some to different answers later on, so they can randomize that if they want to.
Mark, before you move on, I just want to let people know that Flash Player is no longer supported as of the beginning of this year. So if you have Flash on your computer, you should delete it. It is they've replaced it with HTML5, I believe. So you may want to check your programs, and if you have Flash installed on your computer, get rid of it because it is very hackable, and it's one of the reasons why it's no longer being used.
Cool. How did you get that to cross out? You have to tell me how you did that.
It's called annotation. I use the annotation thing.
So somebody just asked that they got or stated that they got complimented at the end of the interview, or that they gave concise answers. And so, yeah, that's a very positive thing. If you're hiring people, sometimes it can be, drudgery to listen to all of, the answers. So being concise is much appreciated by hiring managers. Okay, here's somebody's comment. Bonnie talking about yeah, so that's a good point, right? Because there is no two-way and a one-way conversation. So you don't get to ask questions. You don't get to ask them to clarify what they're looking for. You don't get to ask them their opinion. There's fewer chances to build rapport, definitely. Okay, it's, you know, I don't know exactly how you would go about building rapport in a one-way interview. So yeah, they're definitely to the company's benefit. They believe they're saving time and calling out candidates that aren't very good matches, you know, kind of automatically. And but on the other hand, it's much more. It gives you a better chance to present your personality and your enthusiasm, which you really couldn't do very well in a written question, for instance. Another way to do this is just to send out a questionnaire and say, please give me the answers to these questions, right? And so it's much more difficult for your personality to show through in your writing. Your conversation style is not your writing style. I mean, it just can't be, I guess, unless you're a novelist or something. So those are advantages, even if it's not interactive, even if it's a one way, over other techniques they might use to save time or to, you know, reduce the number of candidates in the pool that they're considering. So good question from Bob, Canada Bob, about how can I ensure. You know, let's have a conversation about that afterwards about what you think you did to actually blow the interview, and we can address that. Okay, what should we do during the video interview? Let's log in at least 5 minutes early. Now for a bot, no need to do that. You know, just log in on time. But if it's going to be a face-to-face thing, you want to be a few minutes early. As Jeff says, if you're not early, you're late. So make sure you're not late. Smile. So I just mentioned that. It's hard to smile on an email response, but you can smile with a one-way bot, and certainly you can smile in a two-way video interview. So this is the first impression, and you want to be smiling when you come up or they come up. Look into the camera when speaking. Now this takes a lot of practice. And for example, right now, turn on your camera if your camera's turned off, and just spend the next 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, focusing on the camera and not what's going on around you. Not what's going on in my screen, not what's going on in the video screen, not what the other participants are doing. Focus on that camera, and then you're going to get an idea of how tough it is to do that for just 2 minutes. Now, that's what you're going to need to do, because if your answers are 90 seconds to 2 minutes long, you're going to spend 2 minutes looking at the camera, and then when they start to ask another question, you can spend some time looking at them. Okay, but then you're back to looking at the camera. And to help you, Jeff was just showing his smiley face. You're going to post that up, Jeff? There you go. He's got different size smiley faces that you can put on with a hole in them. You got to punch a hole in them, and you put them over your camera and let the camera come through. And remember to smile, and remember to look at the smiley face. I've got one that I drew myself on my computer, and that'll help you. But here you go, just today, right now, practice looking at that. Got to get a stopwatch or something, take a look at your watch, and just focus for 2 minutes and see how challenging that is. Well, you know, things are going on your camera. So I just mentioned this. So when you're talking to the camera. That's the way you make eye contact. And when they're talking, you can look at them. So you're not completely devoid of seeing what they're getting feedback from their expression or their demeanor. But when you're talking, you want to be looking right at the camera. Lean in slightly is a good idea. So besides having the camera at the right height and your lighting at the right height so it doesn't reflect off your glasses, you want to lean in a little bit, and then you can lean in a little more or go back when they say something interesting. And I don't think you need to practice this. I think you need to realize that you can do it. It's not bad. It's not distracting. And it's something you will do naturally, as if you were in a regular conversation across the desk or a table. You tend to lean in and lean back or nod your head when you agree with things that the interviewer is saying, and or you want to make a point. Sometimes you lean in. I do, at least, and I can't really stop myself. And I don't think it's something you can really practice. Just be aware that it's not, that it's allowable, and it's not ineffective. I think it's very effective and not distracting. And there we go. Be authentic. Be yourself. Smile when you feel like smiling. Quip when you feel like quipping. I'm a quipper. Short quips. Be yourself. And that works over video. It works over video, even though you may only be 2 inches tall on the screen. You can see that kind of thing. And we often give candidates advice to be more natural. It's not, just because you're on video doesn't mean you have to be stiff. Just because you're interviewed doesn't necessarily mean you have to be stiff. You want to be businesslike, but you also want to be authentic. And if Walt was here, he'd say, I am, I do, I help. This is what people, they value what you on, and so they want to know personality of the person they're considering to come to work with the company, and so let it shine through. Let it shine through. You can express your enthusiasm and your interest. This is all the word selection, and has really nothing to do with the video environment. Nod when appropriate. Okay. One of the ways to show enthusiasm is to have a statement of enthusiasm. And we will talk about this when we talk about openings and closings. And we talked a little bit about it when we talked about preparing for a specific interview. And so you want to have a couple of reasons why you are interested in this company or this job right up front. And you can use that as your greeting. So it cuts to your motivation. Why are you interested in this job? Why are you interested in this company? And I suggest you have two specific reasons. And it can be because you have skills and experience and you love doing a certain aspect of the job. It can be because you are aligned with the mission and values of the company. It can be because you like their product. A personal kind of connection is good as well. But as part of your enthusiasm, your internal thought process, why are you excited to be having this conversation? And if it's a one-way, why are you being excited to learn more about the opportunity? Okay, is it comes through in your voice, your word selection, the energy that you project. And again, you can't do that on a written response. You can only do that in a video response, whether it's one way or two-way. Pause before speaking. This is particularly important in general in interviewing, is that you don't rush. People think that they need to fire off the answer to the question immediately. A lot of times they start talking before the question is over. But in the video world, because there can be delays, dropouts, you definitely need to pause for sure every time to make sure you've heard all of the question and it's completed, they've completed their thought on the other end. Okay, and no, it's not really true that you need to answer the questions quickly. That probably comes, my best guess is that comes from, when you were in school, the teacher would ask a question and you'd throw your hand up, because you knew the answer and blurt it out. But in the real world, take some time to consider what you're going to say and deliver that concise and specific answer to their question. And that's what's appreciated in the real world, in the adult world of interviewing and job selection. So some people pause before answering every question, even if they know the answer, okay? So they want to make sure they frame it correctly and deliver it appropriately. And that works as well. Nobody who's interviewing you is going to think that's strange. They will even appreciate the fact that you're being so conscientious about answering the question, in the most direct and concise manner, just like somebody just mentioned in the chat window. So pause before speaking. What can I say? Avoid touching your face. It's amazingly distracting. I don't know why, for me personally, but it's amazingly distracting. And I think the research says you touch your face 10 to 15 times an hour. Just people, just do that. On the video, since the only thing that I can see is your face and maybe part of your shoulders, it's very noticeable. So avoid touching your face for whatever reason. All right, I think I'm done. And practice. So I've mentioned several times things you can do, when you're on a video conference, even this one today, okay? When you're ready to practice for a specific interview, you get the same opportunity to look at the camera and deliver your enthusiasm and ask questions, because the pit crew does two-way practice interviews, but we'll assess your video setup, the height of your camera, your background, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. You get a recording of the interview, so afterwards you can see for yourself what it looked like before and after you might have made changes. And you can see, how much time you spent actually looking at the camera or perhaps looking someplace else. So those are all the things you get when you come and practice with the pit crew. Walt, in his workshops, he also records them. So now the workshop is more of a, let's, give an answer, ask a question, give an answer. Okay, well, let's try it in a different way. So you can try several different responses to a question in the workshop. He also talks a lot about how to differentiate yourself. But anyway, it's all recorded, so you can see yourself in that situation as well. And so those are opportunities for you to get additional practice.
Mark, there are a couple good questions and comments. Alkeisha says, keep a mirror next to the computer so you can see yourself smile. But if you just cut out the little smiley face, hopefully that'll remind you to smile.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see, there was one more on here. Oh, what about taking notes on your computer during an interview?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. So that can be very distracting as well, but you should verbalize it. If you're going to take a note, you should say, I'm just taking a note here, okay? And tell them just like that, I'm just taking a note, okay? So they don't know that you've done, you're looking at the dog or something. They don't know what's happened. So that's my advice there.
But I also think you don't want to use your computer if you have noisy keys. And when you go clicking, if you have noisy keys. If your keyboard is truly silent, you probably can get away with that. But, I've been on calls and I hear other people, and all of a sudden, when they're advancing to the next slide, you hear that little click because they're using the keyboard because it clicks. So you want to avoid that because that's distracting.
Yeah, I don't recommend typing while you're trying to talk or listen at all. You might make a note or two, and they should be pretty brief. The time it takes to take those notes.
Right.
Because it falls in that category of being distracting. And
little handwritten notes, probably the best way to go. Yeah. All right, well, Mark, thank you very much. Walt, thank you for being with us today. I know you're watching and checking out how Mark's doing. Just want to remind you other programming we have coming up tomorrow on Effective Resume Thursday, top resume tips that you haven't heard before. And we will be giving away 2 licenses for 1 month use of unlimitedjobscan.co. So if you join us tomorrow, you can possibly win for the month of February, be able to use JobScan.co to check your resume against a job description. On Friday, the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, we will do Be a Better Brand Part 2. Last week, a lot of people said, hey, can we have them back? Because the speaker said that he only got through about half his material, and people said, yes, have him back, have him back. So he'll be back this Friday, Be a Better Brand Part 2. He will sort of do a brief overview of what he talked about last time. And you can go watch last week's presentation on our Career USA YouTube channel, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Next Tuesday, our speaker is going to be Ruth Lipsky when we do LinkedIn Tuesdays. And her talk will be LinkedIn Special Features for Job Seekers. And then next Wednesday, we've done lessons 1 through 4. Next Wednesday will be lesson number 5, Analyzing the Job Description. So please join us next Wednesday for our continuing series. All these sessions have been recorded. They will be recorded. It'll be up on the Career DFW Facebook page, and it'll be up on the Career USA YouTube channel later this afternoon. Usually takes about 2 or 3 hours to get it uploaded. Please follow us on Facebook. If you follow us on Facebook every time we go live, you'll get a little alert on your phone that'll tell you that we're currently live. And if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, every time we post a new video, you get an email saying that we've posted a new video along with what the description is. If you're not receiving emails about our daily workshops, if you're living outside the DFW area or you're not on a mailing list anywhere, I just created a new groups.io group called Career USA. So you can send an email to Career USA plus subscribe at groups.io, and you'll be able to join us, and you'll get, I put out 6 different emails every week about our programming that we're doing and our career tip of the week. I'll put this email address up back at the very end on the closing slide, so you have time to capture it if you'd like. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this. Whoops, what happened here? What's going on? Oh, sorry about that. I was not advancing my slides. I'm very sorry about that. Here we go. So here is the slide about the mailing list. And the Career USA YouTube channel looks like this, where you see the red arrow, click on playlist. Don't click on the video, but click underneath on the green arrow where it says view full playlist, and up will come a list of all the different sessions that have been recorded and the dates they were recorded, so you can find the ones that you want if you need to catch up on something. If you haven't joined our LinkedIn and LinkedIn groups, we've got a Career DFW LinkedIn group, a CareerUSA.org LinkedIn group. The Career DFW LinkedIn group has over 12,800 members. You do not need to be living here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for that. And just please remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. We survive on donations. Mark's a volunteer, Walt's a volunteer, I'm a volunteer. I've never gotten paid for any of this over the last 12 years. This is what I do to give back to the community. Please consider making a donation when you get your next opportunity, your next great job, because that allows us to pay for Zoom. It allows us to pay for the web names and the web hosting that we have to pay for any of our expenses. So thank you very much for joining us today. There's the email address if you'd like to join the Career USA mailing list. If you're not getting emails through a different list someplace else, you're welcome to join right there. So Mark, thank you very much. Everybody else, have a great week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.